among the liberal media in Ottawa, which is to say almost all the media in Ottawa, this idea that we need to envelop Justin Trudeau in a cocoon to protect him from any of the ravages of the world. That anybody who criticizes their effectively the son of the liberal media establishment in Ottawa is somehow mean. Now, in most countries, we expect political leaders to face criticism. In Canada, when it happens, the slightest bit of criticism directed at baby Justin is considered outright cruelty.
Hello, viewers, and welcome back to this very special Christmas-themed episode of This Week in Canada. This is episode 29. We have a very special episode for you this week as we have a nice guest, one that we all know and love. Mr. Pierre Poilievre will be joining us for an interview segment, but also here with me, not as good, but he's okay too, is Nico Johnson. Nico, why don't you say hello?
Hello, Roberto. It's so good to be back. You know, this show, it doesn't endorse any particular party. You know, Bobby and I are sort of small C conservatives, but we're not going to support the Conservative Party all the time, you know. That's true. We also have heroes, we have villains like Patty Hajdu, you know, villains like Justin Trudeau, obviously. But we also have heroes, you know. And I think Pierre Poilievre is basically the only guy in the world that we consider to be untouchable. He's brilliant, and it is so exciting that he's on the podcast.
Yeah, it is very fantastic. We're very happy that he is going to be joining us. That's in the second segment, and we're going to touch on a bunch of fun stuff. It's not going to be a too serious interview, so we're going to have some fun with Pierre Poilievre after. But starting off this episode today is a clip. Now, Nico, what are your thoughts on Dr. Theresa Tam, which is Canada's top health officer? Do you like her?
Well, that's a bit of an elephant trap. Do I like Dr. Theresa Tam? No, but not because of anything in particular. I just don't really like her. She's a bit of a nerd, you know, which I suppose is good for her role. But right. My God, she really bores the socks off pretty much everyone who listens to her announcements. And obviously, because she's like a bureaucrat and not an elected official, she's considered to be untouchable. But when you look at Canada's coronavirus response, hasn't been brilliant. No. I think she deserves some scrutiny. So I think to answer your question, I find her immensely irritating.
Well, you may find her irritating, but you know who doesn't find her irritating?
Who?
Is Saint Nicholas, old Father Christmas. You see, while we have to settle for Pierre Poilievre, Theresa Tam managed to score an interview with Santa Claus. So let's play a clip of that, and I would say fasten your seatbelts because you are probably going to cringe watching this. So let's give it a roll.
Well, hello there, Dr. Tam. You've grown a wee bit since I last checked in. I hear you're extra busy these days too, but I hope you still have time to play with all that Lego that I brought you. Ho, 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 ho.
Well, of course, still got the Lego, just less time to build. I actually have something for you today.
Oh, what's that?
I would like to officially declare you an essential worker in Canada and clear you to work on Christmas Eve.
I am so glad to hear that, Theresa.
Not good.
I
mean, I've never seen someone so blatantly read off the script. She clearly has been forced into this by her, you know, by some staffer somewhere telling her that's going to make her more relatable. Maybe more people will take vaccines if Dr. Theresa Tam has an interview with St. Nick's. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. She's a public servant. Yeah, like she shouldn't be doing this sort of thing.
And this is the other thing. There's a lot of things I could pick out here, but I want to try to find out who. Spoiler alert, this is not the real Santa Claus. I have a strong feeling this guy is not Santa because look at this guy's beard. It's clearly just attached. He doesn't even have a heart. When he says ho, 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 it's just like ho, ho, ho. It's not hearty. It's not joyful like I would imagine Santa's is. And it's just a bad job. I mean, altogether, I know, you know, we're supposed to not waste taxpayer dollars, but if you're gonna put out propaganda, could you at least cough up a few bucks for a guy with a real beard?
You know what? I think I figured out who the guy was because he was so pale, like the Santa Claus character. He looked a bit sick. I think it might be from last episode, Stephen Del Duca in a wig. He is so clearly uncomfortable. He doesn't know what he's doing. His hoeing is very, very strange. I mean, it has to be him. I think I found the source of the culprit.
Yeah, anyway, if with that clip there, it's probably Stephen Del Duca. Let's play a quick clip of Stephen Del Duca being weird again.
I'm in my kitchen today, and this is where me and my family spend an awful lot of time baking.
I don't know if that's him, but it certainly is a very bad actor. I say it's an actor. Theresa Tam is the latest out of many medical officers around the world that have either made Santa exempt from isolation orders or say that he is immune. Dr. Anthony Fauci said that he is immune to the virus. But that's not what we saw in Georgia. Let's put this story up on the screen, where Santa Claus, and this one might have been the real Santa Claus, may have been responsible for a super spreader event where he may have given up to 50 children coronavirus. So we're getting some mixed messages here. We don't really know. Is he? Isn't he immune? Is that the real Santa? Who knows? Now let's move on really quickly to our second topic, which is from the fine people at the Toronto Star. The Toronto Star, I don't know if they do this annually, but they've presented the worst people of 2020, written by columnist Heather Malik. Now, for those that are not familiar with Heather Malik, she has given us such gems like an opinion editorial story kind of thing about how she had to stab a raccoon with a fork.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so if you guys want to read that one, we'll put it up. We'll put the link. We'll put it up on the screen. It was this whole story about how she was eating cake, and then she heard a scream in her neighbor's yard, and she went out and she had to spray it with a hose, and then it ran at her, and she grabbed a fork and stabbed a raccoon. Really weird stuff.
I mean, from that alone, you can tell she's a deeply strange person.
Oh yeah, she's
but
a weirdo.
you think by working for a national newspaper, you would be, able to write. But she's subliterate. You read her columns, and they look like they've been written by a teenager. It's really, really poor stuff.
Yeah,
and quite frankly,
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just think, if you're going to go ahead and compare Meng Wanzhou, the Hawaii princeling, who literally committed bank fraud, I think it is, and is currently locked up in a $1 million home in Vancouver. Allegedly, forgive me, to Pierre Big Dog Poilievre, you have to be able to write properly about it. But her writing is abysmal, like everything else at the Star.
So let's go through really quickly who she put on the list. No, I'm not going to read all of them, but anti-maskers, Jason Kenney, it's Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro, Adam Skelly, who's the Adamson barbecue guy who defied restaurant orders because he didn't want his business to close. Pierre Poilievre made the cut, Meng Wanzhou, Rudy Giuliani, and then here's the weird one that I didn't notice at first because it's underneath a break in the text, Mark Zuckerberg. And she lists Mark Zuckerberg and says, quote, "How did the absurd man with the Roman emperor haircut do the world such damage?" Now, I don't know if Malik is familiar with Roman history, but I tend to think that a lot of Roman emperors with Roman emperor haircuts might have done damage at some point to something. It's just a very weirdly written article, but that is exactly what we're going to ask Mr. Pierre Poilievre about in this next segment. So let's go.
Come on, Pierre, let's hear it.
Let's hear it. Thank you, viewers, for that lovely transition, James. Welcome back to the show, and we're very happy about our next guest, which is actually our first guest that we have ever had on the podcast. He is the Member of Parliament for Carleton, the Conservative finance critic, and listed and named as the Toronto Star as one of the meanest and worst people of 2020, Mr. Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, you're a bit of a hero on the show. We have to, we don't support any political party, but when it comes to, the shadow finance minister, we can't hide our love for you, I'm afraid. So it's not going to be the most non-partisan interview in the world.
It's nice of you to say, and I was hoping that I would be getting some royalty payments in the form of some very strong eggnog today, but unfortunately, COVID craziness keeps us separated.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate. Now, we want to just talk about really quickly. I don't know if you ended up reading the Toronto Star article, but it was written by a columnist that I think we all might be familiar with, Heather Malik, who has written such gems.
You're quite wrong. I was not familiar with this person. In fact, I didn't know of her existence until such time as it was brought to my attention recently. I like to say I'm never happier than when I'm not reading the Toronto Star. This new distinction reminded me that the paper still exists.
Yes. I mean, if you can call us a paper. What's fantastic about Heather Malik is that, she is a bit of a character if you're not aware of her. For instance, she put a fork into a raccoon. I didn't quite understand the story. It sounds like a lie. I think, Roberto, you might understand this a bit better than I do.
Well, she wrote a column about her eating a cupcake on her in Toronto, and then a raccoon attacking her and her having to stab it just to get the image of what kind of person we're dealing with. But she also, and I want to hear about your response to this, she called you one of the worst people of 2020 because you are bully mean. I don't know exactly what bully mean is, but I think she means that you actually ask tougher questions. Is there any response to being called bully mean?
Well, there is this sort of, among the liberal media in Ottawa, which is to say almost all the media in Ottawa, this idea that we need to envelop Justin Trudeau in a cocoon to protect him from any of the ravages of the world. That anybody who criticizes their effectively the son of the liberal media establishment in Ottawa is somehow mean. Now, in most countries, we expect political leaders to face criticism. In Canada, when it happens, the slightest bit of criticism directed at baby Justin is considered outright cruelty. It is weird. It is weird and Orwellian. But I think Andrew Coyne, who is certainly no conservative, has said in most countries the media hold the government to account. In Canada, the media hold the opposition to account. And they view it, the job of the opposition is to be kind of a supporting actor in upholding the dramatic storyline that they try to build around Justin Trudeau. And anybody who ruins the ambiance is, among the worst people you can think of. And I happen to ruin the ambiance quite often for this government, and so they've picked me. Every time I get criticism from the liberal media in Ottawa, I just consider that as a compliment, that I'm doing my job. I'm not here to win their support. I'm not here to be liked by the government. In fact, if I am liked by the government, it means I'm not doing my job. Mm-hmm. The job of the opposition is, to use a glib phrase, to hold the government to account. But what does that mean? It means that the government should literally be afraid of Parliament. The most powerful people in the land should be trembling when they walk into the House of Commons, because it is there that the true masters, who are the people, take precedence over the powerful. It is a place where the mighty are made low. And that is what I do for a living. Is it always pretty? Is it gentle? Is it soft? No, and it's not meant to be. It has never been. The House of Commons has always been, for hundreds of years, a rambunctious, lively place designed to bring the mighty low and to make the commoners the masters over the crown.
Yeah, and I think to your point about the liberal media in particular, it's a testament to how partisan they are when they drop the We scandal, which is blatant corruption. It's corruption you shouldn't really see in countries like Canada, which is, developed Western democracies. And yet, as soon as it got a bit boring, as soon as it required any actual work, they dropped it. And we hear nothing about it anymore, despite it being one of the most major events, I think, to happen in Canadian political history. It must, at the very least, be quite frustrating for you, right?
Well, somewhat, but I've come to expect it. I know that you have to go around the liberal media in order to get your message out. I've come to accept that the liberal state media is just an arm of the Prime Minister's office. And so then our goal is just to accept that is the reality and go around them. And so through, there are some independent, unbiased media like Post Millennial Then there's the immense power of new forms of social media where we can reach people. I mean, I think I reach 5 times as many people on my Facebook page alone than the CBC gets viewers for the National every night, which is a good thing. It means that the state media is becoming less relevant and the people are going to become more powerful.
Yes. Perhaps we should transition quickly on to the next question. I'm afraid this is also quite serious. But recently we found out through a Freedom of Information request that Chinese troops trained in Canada. And it wasn't just, I mean, this wasn't really picked up. It was cold weather training. And it appears to me quite interesting or curious or eyebrow raising that Canada has quite cold weather. And it seems for that reason alone, not particularly sensible. But this is just one item in a long pattern of the Trudeau government basically rolling over for what is a particularly malicious regime. What do you think about China? What does Canada need to do to stand up to this threat?
Well, again, it reminds us that when Trudeau said he admires as his favorite regime in the entire world, the one he most wants to replicate, the basic communist dictatorship of China, it wasn't just another of his gaffes. And, you know, the benefit he gets, ironically, from this kind of Forrest Gump image, you know, the guy who gaffes and says stupid things all the time, is that when he said that, a lot of people thought, okay, well, he didn't mean that. Of course he didn't mean that. He just being dumb again. But no, actually he did mean it. He meant it very real, or very, very literally. Just like when he praised Fidel Castro, he meant it. He does admire the basic communist dictatorship, and he has acted accordingly. He has given Communist China $250 million for the Asian Infrastructure Bank. He has refused to properly criticize human rights abuses in that country. He hasn't banned Huawei from our 5G network, even though the other 4 of the Five Eyes countries have done so. And this latest story is so wild that you couldn't make it up. Like if we alleged that, everybody in the country would say, come on. I mean, I know that he's soft on China, but for God's sakes, he wouldn't do that. I mean, to allow their troops to train on our soil. But surely enough, he did. And it is just another example of how he and his government are on the side of the communist Chinese. And they are prepared to do things that are beyond imagination. Even for us, we would never have imagined or even alleged something like this. It is so extraordinary, but yet it is true, and it is now a documented fact. So Canadians who are concerned about protecting our security, our sovereignty, and our national interest have but one thing to do, and that is to get themselves a new prime minister.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I find really telling that we have already touched on here is the amount of coverage that this got in the U.S. and from independent media rather than our own broadcaster, the CBC. I mean, if you look at Fox News, which is the largest news channel in the United States, gets millions of viewers. The New York Post covered it. We covered it. True North covered it. Rebel News broke it. It's been all over Canada, but of course the CBC has been totally absent on it.
Yeah,
of course, and thus that's exactly what we should expect. I mean, the CBC is there are several reporters there who do a good job. You know, I think of some of the recent reporting that they have done, that some of their reporters have done, has not been bad. But by and large, if you think of a Rosemary Barton, she might as well be an employee of the PMO in the way that she reports. And overall, the bias is enormous. And if they ever criticize Trudeau, it's usually from the left. That's what we have to come to expect, and that's why we need a strong and independent media.
I have to ask, obviously there's that famous photo, perhaps you can put it on the screen, with Justin Trudeau and Rosemary Barton. I think it's a selfie. Has Rosemary Barton ever asked you for a selfie?
No, I believe not, and I would not grant the request.
Well, absolutely. And this is something that is a repeating theme we see. And yeah, I like that what you said about the criticisms often coming from the left from the CBC. But this is something I noticed when I was watching the coverage of the fiscal update that was given by Chrystia Freeland. All the criticisms were coming from an angle that, oh, was this the right time? Or nothing really pressing. Whereas you gave a press conference, I believe, the next day that actually took apart exactly how big a catastrophe the Chrystia Freeland update is, that we're now reaching, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a 55% debt to GDP ratio, which is getting close to the limit that we hit in the 90s. Is that right?
Yes. So you've summed it up well. And let me just tell your viewers why that matters. So we don't know where the cliff is. We don't know when we'll hit a financial crisis, but all we can do is look at history. In the 1990s, finance officials had to come in and brief the Liberal cabinet that no one in the world was willing to lend money to Canada because people didn't believe that Canada could pay it back. And so we had a near financial crisis. The government had to run on fumes until Paul Martin came in and he pulled out a chainsaw and he cut tens of billions of dollars of spending overnight. Sent 40,000 public servants home with a pink slip almost immediately. They cut healthcare by tens of billions of dollars. They had literally no money. And that was when the debt to GDP ratio was 66.6%, the federal government's debt as a share of our GDP. Back in March of 2019, our debt to GDP ratio was just 30%. So you could say, look, the limit is 66.6%, and we're at 30%. We've got lots of room. But in one fiscal year, we've gone from having 30% debt to GDP ratio to just over 50%. So you can see basically all of our margin of safety has been eliminated in 1 year. Now, we understand COVID required deficit spending to rescue people, replace the incomes of businesses and workers who had been locked in their homes. That said, you would think that the plan would be to stop the insane levels of borrowing once COVID is over. But the government is saying, no, even when COVID is done, the spending will go on. In fact, they've announced another $100 billion so-called stimulus. They have not told us a single thing about where this money is going to go. And so they're going to continue to add and add and add debt. And when you say, well, what happens when interest rates go up? Well, they say, well, we'll cross that bridge when it collapses. And on it goes. The other thing to keep in mind is that our total debt, that is to say government, household, and corporate, is now 386% of our GDP. So we almost have $4 of debt for every $1 of output, which is a level I don't think we've ever reached in recorded Canadian history. It's the second highest level in the G7 behind only Japan, much higher than Greece was when it had its financial crisis 10 years ago, higher than Ireland, Portugal, higher than the United States was when it had the financial crisis of 2008. So we're living on borrowed time. We have a house of debt, and that house will collapse when interest rates rise. When will that happen? We don't know. But the point is, why not act prudentially now to reinforce our house, build it on paychecks rather than credit card debts, so that when rates do rise, we can afford it?
Yeah, but I suppose what's the way out of this? Is it just through austerity?
No, it's through producing wealth. So the debt to GDP ratio is based on a numerator and a denominator. And the denominator is the GDP. If you grow the economy, grow our incomes, grow our businesses, then they have the financial wherewithal to service the debt. And the ratio of debt to GDP can actually decline rather quickly. So how do you do that? You can't flip a switch, but here are some obvious things. There's $20 billion of resource projects that are awaiting federal approval right now. We could approve those. We could even reopen some previous projects like the Tech Frontier mine, a $20 billion mine, which was never actually denied. It was just killed through delay. We could approve it, and if Tech Resources wants to build that $20 billion mine, they can. If not, they could sell the approved permit to some other investor who will. We have 1,220 trillion cubic feet of natural gas just waiting to be harvested, liquefied, and sent to energy-hungry Asian markets that want to close down coal fire and replace it with natural gas. We have we're losing roughly $80 billion a year to interprovincial trade barriers. Knock down those barriers so we can buy and sell with ourselves. Let's get the provinces to fast track the approval of foreign credentials of newcomers to Canada who are engineers, doctors, electricians, etc., but can't work because they can't get a permit to work. Let's make Canada the fastest place in which to get a building permit. Right now, we're ranked 34 out of 35 in the OECD for delays to get a building permit. It takes 168 days longer to get a building permit in Canada than the United States. What if we were the number one in the world? We could build factories and mines and other infrastructure of production to generate the wealth that can shoulder the debt and give us a better quality of life. That's how you do this, through paychecks rather than credit cards.
Yeah, that's fantastically put. Seriously, I mean, does sound a bit grim because we don't exactly know how the future is going to play out, but we can hope that perhaps Trudeau will start making better decisions. I do wish we had more time. Now, Mr. Poilievre, I do have a question, and this is more a personal one from me and Nico at the company. You see, we're nonpartisan, and we go about our business. We vote for who we feel will do the best job for the country. But Nico and I are also big fans of vapes, e-cigarettes. Now, we often get flack from our viewers because we sometimes vape on the show. We have since stopped doing that. It is unprofessional. But we did want to ask, would you be able to pledge that if a conservative government hopefully does happen in the future, would you guys ban e-cigarettes, or could you promise me that you guys will never do that?
It's something to which I've given no thought. I don't. I'm in favor of personal freedom, so you have to decide what you want to do with your own lungs and live with the consequences. But listen, I can't pledge that I will ever vape with you. It's not something I've ever done or plan to do. But listen, each to his own.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
That's a marvelous Christmas present. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. And who knows, maybe in the future we do Thanksgiving with Michael Barrett or something. You know, see how it goes. Yeah.
Wonderful friend, and he's doing a terrific job here fighting corruption. He is Canada's #1 corruption buster on Parliament.
He's definitely an all-star. Well, thank you very much again, Mr. Poilievre. Thank you so much for doing this. We wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas as well.
And Merry Christmas to you. Many blessings.
Wow, well, that was a lot of fun. We want to thank Pierre Poilievre for coming on the podcast. It was very unexpected, came together very quickly, and we thank him a ton for that. That was pretty cool, right, Nico?
So much fun. Yeah, and you know what? Maybe we'll do that again. This was such a joyous success that I'm sure, you know, in the future, maybe for Thanksgiving, we'll invite Doug Ford on, you know, or something like that.
Yeah, you can make us a cherry pie. Now, here is something that we want to say thank you to as well, is the fine people, our friends at SodaStream. Now, if you guys are not familiar with this technology, it is from the 25th century. I found it somewhere on the street. I'm just kidding. They sent it to us because they're our friends, and it works this easily. You just put it in the thing. You do this. Oh, that sounds nice. Boom. Then you have a SodaStream. You have soda water at your fingertips immediately. Our friends at SodaStream also sent us a bunch of flavors. This one is iced tea honey. I do like that one a lot. My favorite is the ginger ale. So just a big shout out to them. And let's say our goodbyes. Nico, I think this has been one of our more fun podcasts that we've done in a long time.
I loved it. I'm not going to be here for the proper Christmas special, I'm afraid. But, you know, I hope everyone has a really Merry Christmas. I hope you have a wonderful New Year's Eve and a really splendid New Year's, or New Year, I suppose. Keep watching us. That's my present. Oh, and also, what would be a really, really nice present is subscribing to the Patreon. Come on, guys.
We really, really do appreciate it. Well, you did get a few patrons last week, and coming in the new year, we will be adding perks to these patrons. So if we're not exactly sure what the tiers will be yet, but if you subscribe, it's not just giving us money. We will do something as feedback, as a thank you to those that subscribe. And thank you to those who already have. There's 3 or 4 of you who have already, and we cannot thank you enough. So I think that's it, Nico, for this week.
I think it is. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you again soon. Hopefully not too far away.
Yeah, okay.
Bye-bye.
Whatever, Nico.
That was bad. Sorry.